Good evening and welcome to the May 2022 Board of Architectural Review meeting. This is a hybrid meeting, and we have some folks joining us in person. All of the BAR members are here in person, but then we should be streaming online, and folks may be joining online as well. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. I'm joined by the chair of the BAR, Brett Gastinger, who will be chairing the meeting. For anybody who's watching online right now and wishes to provide comment for any of the applications we have, or wishes to provide comment on any other items, you'll just need to register for the meeting on the city's calendar, and you'll need to join through Zoom in order to do so. But just let me know if you have any difficulties. I'm checking my email throughout the meeting, but I'll pass things over to Brett Gastinger, our chair. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome to this regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review, except this meeting is anything but regular since it's the first time any of us have met in this room in this format all in person. So that's just a bit of an introduction to please have a little patience with us learning these weird things about meeting in person. Robert, I wanted to just ask you if you could also share, for anyone who's not here tonight, who's watching online, but would like to come to a future in-person meeting, can you describe how they would attend?
Sure. So there are a couple of ways that you can register to attend in person. We have slots for 20 members of the public to join us for future in-person meeting or hybrid meetings. You can either email Jeff Werner or myself. Jeff's email is wernerjb@charlottesville.gov, or you can email me, watkinsro@charlottesville.gov, just asking to be inserted into the pool for in-person attendance. And you can do that the week leading up to the BAR meeting. The next BAR meeting, I believe, is June the 21st. Or you can go to the Charlottesville's BAR webpage, and there's a link for registering for in-person attendance there. There's a little form that you fill out, and it'll get sent to Jeff and me. So you can either email us or you can register online on the city's webpage. And then we'll confirm the day of the meeting, June 21st, that you've received a slot for in-person attendance.
Excellent, thank you. So for tonight's meeting, staff will introduce each item, which will then be followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. I will then ask for questions from the public, and since this is a hybrid meeting, I'll look over to Robert to see if there are any questions from online. And then we will follow by questions from the BAR. After questions, we'll go to comments from both the public and the BAR. For each application, members of the public are... Is this actually registering my voice? Members of the public are each allowed 3 minutes to ask questions and 3 minutes to offer comments. Speakers should identify themselves and provide their address. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, and that is regarding only the exterior aspects of a project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. So the first item on our agenda are matters from the public that are not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
Mr. Chair, it looks like we don't have any attendees who are online right now. So unless the applicants have any items for comment not on the agenda, I don't think we'll have any public comment.
Okay, excellent. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and tonight it's very simple. We just have the meeting minutes from August 17th, 2021. Do I hear any comments or a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, Mr. Chair.
Second?
Thank you. We'll get it.
Great.
Let's see, does the chair usually call the vote, or should I call the vote? I don't remember how it works in person.
I'm so used to you doing it.
Yeah. I'm happy
Yes,
to.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Abstentions? No, okay. That brings us to a first item on the agenda, a deferred item, and that is 310 East Main. And we'll hand it over to, is there anything from city staff first?
Well, yeah, let me, just so we can practice doing it, is it best camera-wise to?
Remy, do you have a preference? Sorry, if Jeff stands at the podium for the staff presentation.
He can either sit down or be at the podium.
Okay,
Either one
whichever you
works.
prefer, Jeff.
And then when Robert steps up, he gets to
Robert can use the podium.
raise the microphone higher. So, this, and the reason I would just introduce this, that, so first off, this building was built in 1916. It's a couple blocks down the street. In 1956, the north facade, the mall side, was reconstructed. And then again, in 1982, it was reconstructed with the modern contemporary design that's there today. We believe the south facade was probably done at the same time. This is within the downtown ADC district, and it is listed a contributing structure, and it just gives me an opportunity to explain, because I was explaining to some folks in NDS today what that means. Within one of our locally designated districts, contributing structure means, at least as far as the BAR is concerned, only means that a demolition review comes to the BAR. So when you look on that map in the guidelines, that's our official map. If something is shaded, it is a contributing structure. If it's not shaded, it is not. And so if someone wanted to demolish a structure that isn't shaded, then they do not need to come to the BAR. If it's shaded, yes. So there's a little bit of distinction between how we approach it relative to the BAR and how a contributing structure is treated relative to the National Register and the State Register. So I thought that would be helpful to share. This is a project that you all looked at, some of you looked at in October, and there were some just questions about details. I think overall the design, the response was positive. It was just questions about the details, and Robert came back in February actually, I thought it was last month, wasn't it?
This is for.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he came.
I'm sorry, last time.
We just had it, right,
5 minutes.
right. So, yeah, it came in and it just shared some ideas of where where they're taking this panel that's on the north elevation. So, but I think, yeah, even that night, we were missing quite a few of you. So this is, we had the discussion, but it's good to have all of you here tonight. I think we can get a good, a positive discussion out of it. There are samples back here. I don't know if we can show those or how to, but I think I'm less concerned about whether we're standing behind a podium and more concerned if we need to look at something, we'll go get it, or if we want to get up and go look at it, let's give the applicant the opportunity to show us what needs to be done. So Robert is here. I don't know if I have not much more I can offer. I really like to just dive right in. So question is, would you like us to carry that up front here?
My preference would be to have the materials here, at least, not so much that we show the materials on the camera, but that the
Right.
public can hear our questions
Right.
and comments.
So I'm going to go and Celia and I can either move us.
Maybe I could.
Yeah, you could go ahead and start.
I'm Robert Nichols with Formwork Design Office. I feel like I've said so many things about this. I'm going to try to err on the side of brevity tonight. I think we made a significant transition in just our whole kind of strategy and attitude towards this decorative piece, and that was shown to you in February, where we went from just a complete abstraction to layering some cultural, some topographic, and other data on it. So I won't say anything more about the genesis of that. Most of my comments I'll make that kind of go along with the fact that tonight we have physical samples in front of you, material samples. with respect to color, previously I'd been describing these, the metallic, the coated metallic materials on the mall as black. The color that we've settled on is, and in our minds, and I probably said the phrase warm black, we'd been looking for warmth in the color, in the black. And we have a minuscule chip tonight it's called a bronze or something of that sort. And it's quite dark. It behaves, it's really nice in the shade, which is what we'll have on that side of the street. It, you know, shade and tree cover notwithstanding, there's a lot of light bouncing around there, and it in quite many circumstances reveals the contrast that we're looking for with respect to the backing material, which is a very light anodized aluminum, but in a bronze shade. And that material, the color for this, which is the dark bronze, it has a little bit of a metallic flake, which, as we said earlier, gives it a little depth, and it helps it tolerate pollen and things like that a little bit without looking immediately, kind of lessened. And then we also have brick samples for you tonight in mortar, and I think the three of them together do a good job. The three of them, the dark color here, the light bronze backing, and the brick, to our eye, are well tuned with the little bit of warmth that we're looking through to come through. Otherwise, what's a fairly neutral palette. Also, in terms of material, Breck had made some comments, I think the first time we showed this, about these projecting components of this and how that was going to be handled down close to grade, both in terms of really encroaching into the right-of-way and also either accidents or vandalism. And his comments really helped us get more complexity and kind of think layering to the system, where below 8 feet or so, or really higher than that, 9 feet, we don't have any of these projections. And if you recall, when these projections do occur up higher, they correlate with topographic information. So as we get up into the Blue Ridge and then go over the mountain, they adjust accordingly. When we're really down in, I'll back up a bit. This is a very crude, gross map where the 3-notched road connects Richmond to Stanton. When we're towards the bottom, the lower 9 feet of the panel that more or less, corresponds with the tidewater conditions, we have no three-dimensional characteristics, and instead we have more of a graphic indication of just kind of low, non-varying topography, and that's the circular penetrations. Nonetheless, at the lower levels, I think we really need to be aware of durability down there, so we'll probably, at those elevations, have a material that's about twice as thick as this. For the most part, it'll look, as you see here, you will probably be able to register a little bit of that depth in the penetrations. We'll probably elect for a little bit more thickness as we get higher, but again, all those, the panels that are going up there, each panel is about 3 foot square, would be out of reach and, have to tolerate the occasional falling branch, but wouldn't be subject to vandalism or accidents or something like that. I think I'm going to leave it at that, and we're here to answer questions. And the views here, and I think in the next few pages, maybe let you see with a little more clarity what specifically would be happening with these panels in ways. Our previous illustrations, I think almost all of them were full view, and it kind of reduced detail down to a level that was very hard to register.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public to ask questions?
We do, Breck.
Okay.
We have 2 members of the public, and if either member wishes to provide comment, please raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Mr. Chair, neither members of the public are raising their hand.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Robert, you mentioned
as we were speaking before the meeting, there were some of these examples that you all didn't like, and you wanted to make sure weren't going to be in the final design. Could you clarify that for the record?
Yeah. So what's happening is they're kind of overlaying conditions, and in most cases, they behave nicely. Some cases like this, when we have a topographic change we want to make, we're both adjusting the angle of this flap, but also to reveal more of the backing material, we're shortening the length of the wing. And then we get collisions like this where the circle cutouts are intersected, and we're not fans of that, nor of this condition where we find it awkwardly close. So we're going to build into our algorithm that when these, depending on the length of the wing, we'll always modify the number of columns of circles here so we don't get either of these two unwanted conditions.
Good. Thank you.
Is that the maximum angle that they,
No, I expect, and what's modeled digitally gets up to about 60 degrees. This is just hitting 45 here. It's definitely a goal to not let them be confused for 90. We want them to be directional. Have a grain, so.
right,
Just, I believe I heard you right, so the first 9 feet up from the ground, everything will be flat and flush?
Yeah, and that I think comes across fairly well in the illustrations, and so.
It does.
There's two kinds of penetrations that are being indicated there. There's the circle, like so, that indicates a certain kind of low type of topography. But then there's another shape that's slightly more dense, and that is indication population. So Richmond, Charlottesville, Crozet, and Waynesboro.
What does that dense square look like?
We don't get.
I can.
By dense, do you mean more holes?
Well, they're different shape as well,
Ah.
which allows for greater density. So, you can see, at least you can see there's a difference in the grid. We're 5 by 3 in the lower left there, that's Richmond. And it's also kind of a racetrack shape. So they maintain the same height as the circles, but they get a little narrower this way, which allows for the greater density.
Do you have an elevation of the first, 5 to 10 feet?
I think the one flat view we have in there should be, it's all vectors, so it should be zoom inable. What we're seeing there is,
it's on 4.5 also.
well, and yeah, and that actually shows a, this is one I sent.
This is the
Yeah.
one you sent today.
Yeah, actually, that shows an overlap that we've gotten away from of both round circles and racetracks. It was not helping. Maybe on the, that's pretty zoom. What about the,
It wasn't helping in the sense we didn't like the cutout when we saw the cutout
Yeah.
in one of the
this
mock-ups.
one is current,
But
and
the-
that's the
but
preferred
the-
view.
The density is the same.
That's a. The projection blurs a little bit, but there's an oblong, definite oblong character with straight sides, so.
Is there going to be a sign that explains to people what this is?
I think we've been thinking about that, and I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't have it figured out. And here we are.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, one of the, I'm trying to, as I think about how to talk about this without going down every little rabbit hole, I was trying to think, what are our goals, not here, but just with the design of really anything downtown, but particularly something this, which is decorative and like it's kind of free, a blank slate, if you will. That, to me, things like this, their success comes when when they don't become mute quickly, so that there's some complexity and perhaps some ambiguity that lets you get more familiar over time. That said, why leave something unaddressed when it's there? And by that, I mean, just the basic. There's probably 3 phrases that could mention this. There is a technique where we can very easily engrave into we have a few panels like so where there's no penetration, but the various rules that determine where we get penetration, where we don't, is left a few flat panels. And I think I would like to have a bit of information there, a little description that doesn't reveal itself as a historic plaque, but just a little explainer for those who.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you have to, or.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious if I'm gonna be the only one in the mall that knows what this is.
Well, I hope not, but B, I hope that wouldn't matter. That's the other thing, that any appreciation of it or perhaps dislike of it isn't dependent on, someone else's head being as much as mine or as yours as on the genesis of we live in a culture where common languages for decorative schemes, that's kind of been gone for quite a long time. And yet, it's still a puzzle, it'd be nice to have some glue, some history or some kind of cultural resonance there. So I asked myself the same question. I think I would like to get a minimum amount of description.
I do agree that interpretation is incredibly important in this space, just to kind of contextualize what this means, especially because you have projections here that some people may consider dangerous or look dangerous. Have you done any studies on how they will affect birds at all?
I haven't.
And forgive me if you've already answered this. What does maintenance look like on this? Will you have to paint this?
This has, the finish on this will go on in the same technique, same method as any coating on a storefront or a, commercial glazing system. So no more so than a system like that in terms of the maintenance of the coating.
Robert, could you describe the weathering that you would expect on the backing bronze material? And is there a gap, or is it literally like fastened directly to
There will
the-
be a gap, but not much of one. The gap as it grows introduces another shadow, which starts to break things up or blur them. But I think we do want some air movement back there. When I originally thought about this and brought it to you, we were calling it bronze. We like the idea of having a real material back there, but we really, to maintain the kind of contrast that we want, we just can't go with a architectural bronze back there. So we're using this anodized aluminum, which is pretty stable, and because it looks metallic because you are seeing the metallic nature of it. But it should be quite stable. It's an exterior material.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Well, but your topographic intentions will only be really noticeable if you're looking to it from the east, correct?
Well, no, I wouldn't put it that way.
Because this way it looks all black.
Well, not as you move.
Well, no, I know, but
It'll reveal itself.
right,
in a
but
different way.
it's not legible just at any angle. You have to be a specific
It's
angle.
definitely a different experience coming from that
Okay.
side. I mean, in fact, it won't, as you're coming from the west,
West.
it won't expose itself any more as you approach it, for the most part. And the opposite would be true.
I expect, well, I'll save it for comments. Any other questions?
I have a question about the materiality. Do you think there's going to be enough of a contrast? So what we saw on the table back there is that black is actually going to be more of like a satin charcoal color, and then the wood is the bronze you're talking about, or the anodized.
Yeah.
And then just looking at those renderings, the bronze portion looks to sort of glimmer, and there's almost a sheen to the renderings. And that illustrates a nice contrast between the two colors. And so I'm curious, number one, why if you think that there's enough contrast in those colors, and maybe part of the story here is how the sun hits the piece you have in your hand.
I do think there's enough contrast. I mean, it's a real question. We pushed, this product is about as light as you can get within this range, and we really didn't want a clear anodized, for example, back there. It's certainly not as brilliant. Our elevation shows it shocking. The orthographic elevation shows it a super bright color. I think I have two criteria that helped us get comfortable with this. First, we spent some time, a fair amount of time down there with it. Second, I'm fine with some subtlety, but that's kind of subjective. But I think more so is both the repetition of the penetrations, the dots, but also the length of the pathway. It has that kind of Great Wall of China effect where the width of it is nothing substantial, but somehow the length of it, they say, I don't know if it's true, you can see it from space, but whether that's true or not, I know it is true that things that are long, your eye is happy to fill in the gaps where they are. And I think those two conditions favor whatever pairing there is there. But it is a concern, and that's what's led us to abandon a few other material choices and get to this one.
When I first saw this project, I thought that you were actually leaving a glass facade behind it. Actually, it became a kind of screen for the elevator because it exists as glass right now. Probably it's pretty far along in the process to make a decision like that at this point, but I can imagine that, like at night, for example, with a lit elevator shaft behind it, it would be quite spectacular. That's my big concern too, is that it's never going to look as bright as it does in the renderings.
Yeah.
It's going to have shadows and something being behind this as well. I mean, that's my biggest skepticism. As far as interpretation, I don't mind that we have to figure it out for ourselves. I think there are a lot of things about the mall that we don't know about, but we still can enjoy and appreciate, and we learn about by talking to people. For that part, I'm very comfortable with that part personally.
Did you have something to say about it?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that we did study that option, the layers of
The backlighting.
the backlighting, yeah, sort of the layers of maintenance and getting to that lighting, the types of glass we would have to use, ruled that out for this project. And I wanted to say something about the difference in the colors and the contrast, because I happen to really like the slightly less contrasting than the model, the 3D model shows. I think that a little bit subtler, as we're seeing in person, is nicer. It's just hard. The model always muddies the view in my estimation, versus seeing it in person. But to me, it's rather nice that there isn't a shocking in contrast.
Could you pass around the metal samples, the back and the
And I'll throw in a brick. So here's a solution.
This is the mortar.
I'm sorry?
This is the mortar or the brick?
That's the brick.
Okay, thank you.
Here's the mortar.
Okay.
And I had a question about the mortar. Is the, and are you intending to have it raked back, or would it be come up to the face, or is it?
It would be to the face, but not, you know.
Mhm, yep. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, one thing, we should, a long time ago, must have been the first, maybe the second time we were here, we had some changes in the orientation of the brick at the base of the building. And we're not showing it now, and I just wanted to make clear that we had, given the limited size of our panels, we just decided to let everything run as a running bond. And so there are no soldiers, and there's no change in material as we get to a pedestal finish.
What size brick is it? Is it standard?
It's a modular. We've got these 20-inch wide piers that I found a challenge.
Great.
And Robert, you said you have the brick, the actual color, one brick. The rendering shows like some variation in the brick color. Is that the rendering?
There's very little, there's not an intended range in the selected brick.
Okay.
There's a little bit of just texture in it, which creates a little bit of
Little
movement
variation.
or-
Okay. Any other questions? So we'll move to comments.
I just want to offer just a little, to kind of help frame the discussion. Obviously, this is and I continue to view it as a sculptural element being used as a part of the facade. But our guidelines don't give us a lot to work with in that regard. But, so there's, you know, to kind of, but to work through some of the, you know, primarily the pertinent review, you know, of what material, color, scale, is it compatible with the site, compatible with them all? And so that's one thing you're weighing is does this fit? And I think, you know, certainly our guidelines introduce the idea of flexibility and new design. We want new and creative designs. We're not disturbing a historic structure in the sense of this isn't removing an element and we're not trying to restore or rehabilitate. This is new and viewing it as such. And the guidelines are also, things like for street level design, provide visual interest to the passing pedestrian. I would say whether love or hate the design, it certainly checks that box. So there are, and I think that we've got, you know, the brick and the glazing, some of the more typical pieces that we can look at are easy enough. But I think, just want to make sure we're sort of staying in, using our guidelines and not getting into liking or disliking a sculpture. And that was the other thought that I also wanted to offer, again, in comments, is as a piece of sculpture, I usually think someone has a title and maybe just what this was named would be helpful. And then the only other piece I had, I guess you asked about birds, is will the birds nest in this? And the last piece, I noticed some discussion about the glass earlier. I have included at the end of the staff report is the report from that discussion a couple of years ago about the flexibility with the VLT. So if you needed anything to reference on that. But as I said, I just wanted to kind of balance this with the design guidelines in this discussion. There's no yes/no list in here, but those are some of the pieces that I think might be helpful moving forward. And with that, my apologies for interrupting.
Do we have any comment from the public, which would be all online?
So if you wish to provide any comment, please raise your hand in the participant tab. We have 3 members of the public, and it doesn't look like they're raising their hands right now.
Okay, comment from the board. while everybody's gathering their thoughts, I'd just add that it's been interesting looking at the sample panel as we've been just talking and as we saw it over there earlier. And I think that actually the way the metal is deployed will be really dynamic in its reflection of a wide range of colors. I've been seeing greens and blues and purples, and it's not even outside yet. So I think that in actuality, it's going to be quite. You might think of it as dark or black, but actually, I think it's going to be quite vibrant in the way that it reflects its landscape. You guys are quiet.
Guess I'll just, maybe we consider it a curtain wall, and then it's not a sculpture, if we're supposed to talk about buildings. But it's very sculptural. So with that in mind, I mean, I think we had discussed whether some inscription or something. Personally, I like Mr. Strange's assessment of kind of let it be what it is, and people can self-interpret. But if you wanted to have some sort of title or plaque, maybe tuck it in the recess of the entryway, so it sort of has to be discovered. I assume like Three Notch Road is this road, like is it Main Street? So I'm kind of curious, is there a way to almost like pinpoint or highlight, like, you're standing right here? But I think it's really pretty neat. I also, for some reason, think it looks like a lightning bolt strike, which is exciting. Personal opinion, but I think it's, this is a facade that had a unique, I'll use the word modern probably incorrectly, adaptation put to it a long time ago, and that's in the spirit of this facade, so I'd support this.
I think I agree with Breck in that I think the materiality is going to work really nicely. Of course, it's hard to see in a dark space, so certainly bringing it outside and seeing it in this mock-up's a little misleading, just with the two materials are off of what they actually are going to be. But I like the idea of subtlety. I think it's such a neat idea. I just want to make sure that that there isn't an underwhelming effect with that subtlety. That there's sort of you strike a right balance between sort of the less contrast, but also something that is imaginative and really strikes people's imaginations as they walk by. And looking at the bronze at certain points, where the light reflects, really does that. I would be curious, just it sounds like you looked at glass samples, but there's this sort of glass that has the foil back. I don't know if that would. I'd be interested in exploring, if I was doing it, a little more depth into the back. Again, not seeing the actual materials together. I'm curious as to how the outside shell interacts with the back. Right now it's a pretty flat connection, and I totally get what you're saying about if you were to separate those two and you create a shadow line that creates a totally different effect. But then sometimes we just have flat metal on flat metal that's pretty flat thing. So just a suggestion maybe as to something to explore. Yeah, but I think I'm excited about it as a another innovation for the mall, and this kind of variation obviously I think is wonderful.
I'll just add that I think it's interesting to go from this this kind of placelessness of futurism to something that's so much about the place. I think it's an interesting kind of about turn. So.
I'll speak in support of it. I applaud the architect and the applicant for sticking with it, doing something interesting, and persevering against our bit of a pushback, wanting to get more information, and not taking the easy way out. So I'm in support of it.
I'll just mention a few of the guidelines.
Those?
In our discussion, yeah, those pesky little things. But I do think this is compatible with them and certainly meets it. All of our, the guidelines that I'm looking at that govern new construction and certainly govern new construction on our downtown mall. I do find that the rhythm and patterns of the exterior and certainly solids to voids is found elsewhere on the mall. That's an easy one. The materials are certainly meet the guidelines. They're noble. They're not the things that are discouraged by our guidelines. And there is a verticality to both of the facades, both South Street and the mall, which is also called out in our guidelines. I do think it's a facade. It's beautiful. It's a piece of art. It'll be a wonderment, I think. And thank you for presenting to us. I think to sort of tag on to what Clayton said, the space rocket elevator that was imagined in the 70s looking to the future, this looks at a past. This looks at a road that not all of us even recognize is the mall. It was 250, the road from Richmond through the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so that's a road that is a past road. It's no longer even called Three Notched Road, but so I think that's interesting, and I think it'll just be beautiful to look at and to walk around, so thank you.
And I agree as well. I've been in support of the project. I think it's been an elegant way of dealing with this challenge of giving this new facade, and I really do appreciate that vertical composition on both streets. I think it's going to be a good contribution. I'm fully in favor. Any other comments, or does someone want to make a motion?
Were there any options, or there any clarifications, Robert, from the, anything that needed to be sort of an A or a B or a preference that we needed?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, good. Robert has taken the reins for this BAR meeting, and I'm very grateful to him for doing that.
Mr. Chair, make sure I get the right one. Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including city design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed facade alterations at 310 East Main Street satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this project and other properties in the downtown ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted. With the qualifications that the applicant made about the types of designs in the sample that will not be in the final design.
Second.
Just a question for Mr. Warner about the motion. It said the facade alterations at 310 East Main Street. Do we need to mention the South Street address, or is that sort of loaded in?
You know, I look back at some of the old motions, and it used to be like, I move to approve this, and.
I know.
But, you know, Carl had asked me, he said it felt like it helped to say the address of what we're, so I just simply, because that's the formal address, that's why I use it.
I mean, it's
Let-
310 Water Street. We can just,
let's just
if
say-
somebody wants to,
Yeah.
if I can just amend
Yeah.
Jody's motion and say, and the facade on 310 Water Street.
Amendment accepted.
Thank you.
Is it 310?
Is it
Yes.
309?
Well, on the February, Well, this says it's 310 on the submittals that the applicants made.
It's a single parcel, and the parcel is
Oh, 309,
identified by
you're right.
310 East Main, even the facade on Water Street.
When you say alteration to the facade.
I think we could just amend, we could say
Right.
the facades on both the mall
Right.
and on
It is-
Water Street.
It was shown as 310 in October of '21, and then it was changed to 309. So, sorry for my error.
So I have, facade alterations at both the mall and Water Street facades at 310.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I forgot how we used to call vote. Now it's been so long. Do I just say all in favor? Or do we do a voice vote? No, we never did a voice vote.
It's good to record who.
I think we do a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Roll call? Okay. Clayton,
Aye.
Mr. Strange, Mr. Bailey,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Ms. Lewis.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alejandro.
Timmerman, aye.
Aye.
And Robert and I will listen to the tape and just to at least have we'll always refer back to it, but for the qualification that Jody had, just to be able to
Sure.
to express that. And
Good. I hope you say it better than I did.
I used the brackets to say I'm kind of getting close to it, I think. You'll notice those. All right.
Thank
So-
you, Robert and Cecilia.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Can we help you move this stuff to the
You know
back?
what you could help me the most is can I collect that later? I mean, I get it out of your way right now.
I guess it's sort of like, I don't know who's.
Sure. I mean, we'll be closing up shop. I assume the meeting will be done by 7:30 or so, if you'll be able to collect it by then.
Can we put it near the front door and then?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Okay. And all those rules remain in place until we get moved somewhere else in some other form of meeting, so.
Is there a break?
They passed through.
Oh, here we go, sorry.
Then, does everybody have the mortar?
Uh-oh.
Order did not get passed.
It was,
You're stealing samples now.
I know. They end up in my closet at, Breck will tell you, in my garden across the street from where he and I live, I have a path through one of the gardens of the brick samples that have accumulated over the years, so, the little split bricks, they don't hold very well, but I just, while we're kind of in between here, I wanted to just, I think it's interesting that I get a lot of questions from people about things that, for example, Rio Road is Route 10, and I get to tell them, no, it didn't happen, or, there's so many myths in this town, and I know you all know, I've been trying to start the myth that the new street lights on Belmont Bridge are an homage to the Seventh Society, and we'll see if that goes, but, so there is something, I will say, in my position, these myths and legends of Charlottesville do take on a life of their own, and then they usually come back to me, what do you know about this? So it will be interesting, in 20, 30 years when Robert is, in charge of the BAR, he'll be able to say, oh yeah, I know what that is. So it's kind of neat to be contributing to that. But it is also, the guidelines don't really, this is something, again, keep in mind as we discuss, what do we have to change or adjust or modify? There's nothing really clear in there about that. All right, so the next thing up, and I don't know, are the Jeffs joining us?
Jeff Dreyfus is online right now. Can we, Jeff, can we hear from you just to confirm that you can hear us and we can hear you before we start discussion?
I can hear you all. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Your disembodied voice, yes.
So
If I can get my audio, start video. There we go.
okay, great.
So
And you're on the
let
big
me
screen.
introduce it, and then it's I love it. It's like the giant talking head. That's the one thing I did not want to be at a meeting like this. But our great leader. This is a project for 123 Bollingwood Road. It's over in the I don't know, I call it the Thompson Road neighborhood, but the what's that?
Lewis Mountain Road.
Lewis Mountain neighborhood, and this is an IPP, so an individually protected property. It's a unique place. This was like Elliewood on the corner. That street was reportedly named for the woman that, or the daughter, or the people that operated a writing studio here at this place. It's got a really neat story to it. But it is built 1884, same year as mine, but it looks a little fancier. It's the Disney Keith House, vernacular farmhouse. Arthur Keith's wife, Elliewood Keith, operated a writing academy here. So there was barn and outbuildings and stables and some really interesting stuff that's visible in the old aerial photos and the old Sanborn maps. There's an existing garage south of the house, which was constructed in 1988. And what's interesting about this house is it does sort of show that progression of a family of, we need more space. And it's almost sort of being slid out the back here over time. What we have before us tonight, Jeff had spoken to us I think several years ago, and it was set aside, and then last November came in to discuss. This is a window, a sliding door on the back of the house, and he had floated sort of the idea. That was a favorable response to it, and so here tonight to kind of discuss that a little further. And I will say there's some information about landscaping in here that will actually be coming to you maybe next month, but it's included just to sort of give some context to what they're trying to achieve with having this opening, looking out onto this future landscape. So again, so it's a relatively compact thing that we're looking at tonight, even though there's other additional information about the site. So we at staff, looking at it, we had recommended approval of it conceptually, but do you have any questions for me? I'll hand it over to the other Jeff in the room.
Jeff, I'm going to minimize your video so that I can share screen to the application that you submitted.
Okay, great, thank you. No more talking head. I really wasn't aware of the new in-person option, so next time I'll be there. I thank you all for hearing us through on this again. As Jeff said, we were before the BAR in November with a concept sketch of this same small project, and the response was favorable, and based on that, we've gone ahead and detailed the design to give you more nuance to what we're talking about and to ideally receive approval for this component of a larger plan that our clients have for the property. So what you see here is a more recent new landscape plan for the property that, as Jeff said, landscape architect Anna Beschenstein will probably be before you all next month with a version of this plan. We included here so you understand the context, the future context, ideally, of the sliding glass door that we're talking about here. Relative to the project itself, you can see that Bollingwood Road is on the right. To the left of us is another parcel, and beyond that is Alderman Road. So the sliding door is on the southwest, or basically the west elevation, the southwest corner of the building, and is not seen from any public roads. It does currently open onto a brick terrace, and the future terrace will likely be bluestone. We're not asking for any approvals, or really, we would certainly entertain any commentary that you all have about this landscape concept plan tonight, but I'm not really prepared to talk about it. I would rather that Anna do that when she comes before you all. But the real idea here is that there will be a small plunge pool, and a large entertaining area just outside of this part of the house. Later in the presentation, you can see this wing of the house is really, it's the kitchen and family dining area. So I think we can probably move on from there. You've seen these images before. This is the elevation that we're talking about. It is interesting to see, we'll see this in some of the photos in the next couple of pages, the evolution of the house, the telescoping additions here on the south end of the house. There in the top left, you can even see an addition, a lean-to addition to the original farmhouse, which the original farmhouse will be more exposed in some of the earlier photos that we'll see. But here, outlined in red, the location of the sliding door. There on the right, we are really talking about taking over those two windows and the door and maintaining the existing head height, 6'8" head height on the interior of the building, as is that current door. The only other thing, sorry, Robert, keep jumping back and forth. We will need to relocate on the right of the window, the far right window, there on the right image, that small enclosure is the electric meter. And so we are going to need to relocate that as part of this project. We don't have that. That's not been figured out yet, but that will need to be moved. Okay, thank you. Some of the older photos of the house, top right is really sort of the image where we were talking about. There on the original farmhouse, the lean-to is not yet in place in that photograph. So some of the first telescoping addition going out toward the right gets consumed by the lean-to that's later added. So we have a series of not original structures here. We can keep going. And here, simply the elevations, existing and proposed. The proposed sliding glass door, we are working to minimize the amount of structure on the element. The idea here is to be distinctly different from the historic fabric of the house. In some of our earlier studies for the house 10 years ago, we were looking at enlarging some of the openings on the original farmhouse there on the left, where the main living room is. And the BAR was very opposed to modifying that facade. So our approach here on this, the newer portions of the building, to take a distinctly different approach, not pretend to be historic in any way, mimicking history, or trying to make it fit in. And so we're going distinctly modern with a 3-panel sliding glass door. The 2 panels on the left will stack with the panel on the right. You can see the alignments that we're going after with the left edge of the new unit aligning with the left edge of the window above it, similar to the window currently in its place, as well as the window on the right. Head height will, as I said, mimic the existing door. I think if we move on. So materials, the house is currently gray, white, black shutters. The intent here is a metal surround that frames the opening, almost a large cutout in the wall, framed by a powder-coated black steel surround. The sliding door system itself likely be white. Black was a little bit ominous, didn't quite look right, like the way that the white at least does relate color-wise to other elements of this existing house. And then as the third element in the whole composition, the stoop that will be bluestone to match the bluestone terrace that we're showing here, assuming that we'll have a bluestone terrace if approved by the BAR. The stoop itself stretches the width of the 3 panels because it compositionally, I think that that's most settling and gratifying. The step down to the terrace is just at the two doors for a little bit of asymmetry, still a little bit more modern than if the step were to go the full width of the stoop. And because only those two panels on the left are operable, functionally, there's a reason for that step. I think that might be, well, the next page is the head-on elevation. We will be repairing any and all of the siding to match the existing. The intervention will require underpinning some footings in the basement, but when we come back, we expect that it will look simply like a surgical cut all the way around, and the siding will be repaired, and no alien patterning going on around the opening. And if we go further, a section through the sliding glass door with elements called out. And then you can also see we include here a plan on the far right, so you can see just exactly how the interior lays out. This will actually straddle the kitchen and the family room. I'm sorry, the family dining area. The dining table is usually there right up against, next to the staircase that leads to the second floor. And I think, let's see, beyond that, we include some of the precedent images that we showed the BAR in November. Again, the idea in all of these that this is a very modern intervention in an historic structure, not trying to pretend to be anything other than that. And with that, I think I've said enough, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Jeff, you're back on the big screen, but I can refer back to the drawings whenever I need to.
Jeff, I've got a question on the, I would say Photoshop model, forgive I'm sure that
Sure.
there's elevation concept, where you show pretty close up what this 3-panel window will look like. I can't figure out whether it's recessed or whether it's proud. If you look at, it's page 71, I believe. If you look at it, on the left-hand side, it looks definitely recessed, and on the right-hand side, it looks like it's proud.
Okay, so I think the shadows are probably confusing on that. If we go to
No,
the
it's not.
section, if we go to the building section, here we go.
Sorry.
You can see the exterior wall comes down. The reason the sliding door unit itself is just proud of the existing wall, Sherry. Part of the reason for that is structural. We are going to need to pour a new foundation and footing underneath there. We've studied the existing basement foundations, and to put it in plane with the existing wall would potentially compromise the foundation. We've had a structural engineer look at it. So in this instance, the window is just proud of the plane of the existing wall, and then beyond that, the metal surround is, let me go to my own enlarged version of this. I just want to get the dimension right in terms of, sorry, here we go. The surround itself is 8 inches proud of the wall, and the window unit is about 4 to 4.5 inches deep. So the metal surround is another 3.5 to 4 inches proud of the wall. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And on both sides, I guess just on the
Yeah.
concept, it looks like it's recessed on the left, but I understand that,
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, well, good to know. And I know some of your examples showed that, that dynamic on the samples that you had shown previously and that you included tonight, so thank you.
Mhm.
I'm going to just double check if there's any questions from the public.
Sorry.
That's all right.
We have two members of the public who are joined on right now. If you wish to provide any comment, please raise your hand. It doesn't look like either participant is raising their hand.
Okay. Any other questions from the board for Jeff?
I just have a question about screen systems. Is that going to be integrated somehow? And, you know, that obviously changes that sort of nice clear effect that we're looking at in the renderings.
That's a great question. There is a screen system that is integral to the frame, and it disappears when it's not in use. So it actually folds into the frame when the doors are closed, and when the doors are open, you can pull the screen out of the frame, and it actually attaches to the operable window edge.
Wow.
It's a German system, and it's really beautifully engineered.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Is there any comment from the public?
If you wish to provide comment, please raise your hand. Neither participant is raising their hand, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any comment from the board?
Can I go back to a question for the applicant?
Sure.
Jeff, how old are the windows that we're demolishing in order to accomplish this? I'm confused about what part of the house.
I'm not sure any of us are clear when these additions came. Robert and Jeff, I know you did some research initially, but I don't know that any of us were, I had done some as well. I don't think any of us were able to discern when these additions came.
Jeff, do you know?
I mean, it seemed like from the census data, there was like a house built, and then Mr. Disney, I think he was associated with the university, a professor, and I think I have that in, yeah, he built it, and Disney had 9 kids, so I think it was sort of but I can't recall, I think
Your staff report says you believe the rear addition, excluding the addition to the southwest corner, likely dates between 1894 and prior to 1907. Is that?
Yeah, and that's just from the photos, aerial photos, are kind of, the Sanborns nothing's clear, but yeah, I would say that's when.
And I would say this is the one historic photo that we have. I imagine it was taken in the 70s that shows the elevation in question. And I think it's possible that these 2 windows on the first level are the 2 windows in question, and a door has been inserted since then. But these might be different. It's hard to tell because there has been this lean-to addition that's kind of subsumed this space in the back.
Certainly the one on the right looks like it's in the same position because it's directly under the one on the second story.
Right.
The other one is hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
The one on the second story has been moved since
This-
that row, and it's also a larger number of divided lights. So
There have definitely been several different changes of just the apertures on this elevation.
yeah.
You can go to the diagram that has the dashed lines and the different colors.
This one?
That one.
Page 60.
The one I did with all the, it's in the staff report.
Yeah, page 60. He's getting to it.
Someone just raised their hand.
I have Jeff Elias is raising his hand, and I believe he's the property owner. So I'm going to go ahead and allow this Jeff to talk. We should be able to hear you now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I've lost my voice, but I just wanted to say that the windows, there's some original windows on the main portion of the home that are single pane, but the windows that we're talking about are double pane windows, and they're different in the photo that you looked at in the top right corner. They have 3 panels across. They're more modern.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It looks like when they moved window A, they also moved window B. They noticed in the photograph, it looked like they were lined up, and there's less of a distance, I think, between B and D, I think, would be my guess.
Yeah, because the lower window is still even closer to that line, that first edition, line number 4. Both of those windows to the left of the yellow line are further right than in that original, or earlier photograph.
For me, and I felt this way when it was presented the first time, that I felt comfortable that these windows would be removed. It did not seem to be that they were either definitively original or and they do sound if they're double pane, that they sound like were a contemporary later addition, nor really critical to the building's overall design or detailing, and also not visible from the street. So I'm in support of this project, and feel like it's an elegant solution that distinguishes contemporary addition to the historic fabric.
I agree. I approve, or in support of it. You took the words right out of my mouth. I think it's a very elegant solution. The way it, clearly contrasts with the historic fabric, but then there are some nice moves to relate to it with the windows and some of the materiality. I think it actually improves the composition of that elevation as well. So I think it's be a nice addition. I think for that house, giving more light to the owners and whatever that space is behind it.
I also think it's a very elegant solution, but I have to say I'm a little amused by the addition of the extra shutter on the story just above it.
I'm glad you caught that, Ron.
Mr. Chair, I can make a motion if you'd like.
Maybe just, if I could, before you do that, just entertain any questions. Although we're not voting on it tonight, Mr. Dreyfus asked us if there was any guidance on the landscape plan, since they will be presenting it shortly. I personally find it in keeping, and given some of the earlier discussions of the many ways that this landscape has been manipulated over the years, I don't find anything particularly objectionable or out of line with our guidelines. Anybody, does anyone feel differently or have other comments? No. Okay.
Bushes.
All right, having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including city's ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed alterations at 123 Bollingwood Road satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this IPP, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Strange.
Aye.
Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Zemer.
Aye.
Ms. Lewis.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Lehendro.
Aye.
Mr. Timmerman.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Okay, motion
Passes
passes.
unanimously.
Thank you, Jeff.
See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you all very much. Appreciate the help and the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I think even the colors, so like my house, it's been a lot of fun, but Breck will tell you, there's, my house, sort of the middle I house, and things got added, and you'll stand there and go, what's holding that up? You're like, I have no idea. I have no idea what were they thinking? So it was kind of fun trying to peel away the layers of this one, so. All right, Jeff, thanks, we'll see you.
Thank you all.
Oh, great head. All right, so thank you very much. Just a couple of questions I had for you all, and then we can, I was hoping, as I said in my email, most of us most of us know each other, but we haven't really met, and we certainly haven't, I know, Clayton, we haven't met you, and David, we used to haze new PAR members, but Carl took, all our hazing book, and we ran out of ideas, but maybe we can get him back to that. James used to have, new BAR members memorize a book of architecture. What was that? The 7 steps, or what was the architecture book you and Carl referred to? I don't know. That's it. That was it. But just so, a little bit of housekeeping, quick question. I'm assuming we'll continue to do this. I don't know where or how long, but I was going to ask, so we had gotten to where everything was, the copies of the submittals, we were going with the electronic version. Is that working? I have not requested any hard copies. If for any reason you feel you want one, let me know. We can get those, but I worry TNN Printing's probably been mad at me, but
Are applicants still turning in hard copies?
No, I've told them not necessary,
Okay.
so. Just, it's, and I had even been getting one for myself that I've gotten with that big screen, I'm getting where I can read them, it worked for me. I didn't think that would happen, but evolution is possible. So, but just want to say, if you want a set, we can get a set. I had a quick question for you all. There's a dead tree on North First Street at Charlottesville Towers. You had looked at a couple weeks ago with some work they were doing on the front canopy. This is one of those where I have a letter from the arborist. It's not a safe situation. They'd like to remove it. I have said yes, but I do have the ability, to require something be put in its place. And I had asked Breck, and we have Jody and your tree commission and others, no trees. So there's a row of pin oak. One, I guess it would be on the south end, is 36-inch. This is about 25 feet away. This one's a 30-inch that's dead. Then about 20 feet away and split by about 15, 20 feet are 2 relatively young pin oak. I don't remember enough from my forestry degree to whether or not you could plant a young pin oak and have it survive. So that was one question, and then the other would be, it is underneath the utility line. They had asked if they could go with one of the small ornamental, an eastern redbud was a request. So so it's not a question of okaying that I'm asking. I'm just curious what you all sort of, relative to trees, and this came up with why that situation with the Wawa. Why are we putting street trees, beneath utility lines? So, so I don't know if you had any thoughts on that or guidance or suggestions. I'd appreciate it.
Whatever Breck said.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten over there yet. I mean, I think in this, where we can, our city desperately needs more canopy trees. But from what you describe, it seems like all of them would be under the utility line?
If you look at the street view, it's the,
So have they already,
yeah, which is why our power went out, because they hadn't. But,
Sure.
yeah, I don't know, I had a conversation with Paul Josie about it, and he had interesting, he's like, yeah, I know they're cutting a hole through it, but we're still getting a tree, at that pedestrian level. And I was like, I don't know, I've always had a problem with hacking trees around lines, but it's more the question of if to put a tree, a large shade tree in a situation where there's already a tree in its place, and, I mean, trees take, if something's removed, they take up that space quickly, and will something in an understory, is it even worth planting? So,
Whatever Breck says.
how did I describe to you as, you're my most reasonable and,
We should go on a field trip.
yeah.
Okay, there are photos.
I mean, if we only planted understory trees under utilities.
Yeah, on the
we'd
left,
have only
on the right, I'm
understory
sorry, the one on the right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
The one on the left is fine, one on the right is the one that,
but
that,
that looks like it's not under the wire.
Yeah,
That looks like it's,
behind.
yeah.
well, if you go down the end of the street and swing around, oh, you know what?
I couldn't pull up the photos. He sent the attachment.
Yeah, so, is that, yeah, go to Street View and spin around. Darn it, do you have that, did I send you that old photograph? That would be fun.
The photos aren't opening for
Is
whatever
it in
reason, the
that plane
attachment's
of
not.
the pinups? That
So-
seems to me to be sufficiently behind the utilities.
It's, so, yeah, you can see, you get a little bit of it there. You can see when, in Street View, when you go down the end of the street and turn back, you can see where they've kind of, this is an old photo, because there's,
It's July 2019.
yeah, if you swing it back around, yeah, you can see there where they've trimmed.
Yeah, I would go with the pinup, definitely.
So, okay, and I, because they did, if you swing it at the end,
That's pretty behind.
so there's two new, that they, and I can't recall when they were put in. Those are pin oak, and there's another one there, so I would say, yes, put another one. We've already got two more, put that in.
Yeah.
But fair enough, fair enough.
In 20 years, everybody will thank you.
It's a, I mean, it's where, it's one of these things where in our regulations say, no, you must, even if it doesn't make any sense, you know, and it's where I kind of pushing things a little bit, saying, all right, well, why am I putting a tree with a 60, 70-foot, you know, crown 10 feet away from a building and underneath the 20-foot power line? But,
In 20 years, they'll bury the power line.
I know, we do laugh sometimes, like, where will we even be in 20 years? All right, thank you, that's very helpful. I think that when there's a life safety issue and someone's asking me and an arborist is expressing, you know, I'm not gonna hesitate to remove something like that. So the third thing I had, I know you all have received a lot of emails about a particular project. And I want to address, I passed it up the ladder the last 2 weeks ago, 'cause I don't know what to do. But I do want to just, it still gives us an opportunity to kind of learn and share a little bit. So it was a project we reviewed in April. It was in a conservation district, which is intentionally a lighter touch. We're not getting into the, an example I used is, even in an ADC district, if someone does a flagstone patio, we don't ask to see what's the pattern of and sizes of the flagstone. So there's certain details we just don't get into the weeds on. This in the drawing that was shown indicated that possibly there was a setback issue with a step. Normally those things, we don't do zoning review. You all are not a zoning body. Nothing that you decide grants a building permit. It doesn't waive life safety code. It doesn't waive city code. It doesn't change zoning. It doesn't, you all are reviewing a conceptual design, and there, as with most things, there are details that we get worked out. I had advised that when a building permit's issued, that's when they look at, you know, the zoning issues. Well, it just so happens with this one was one of those mistakes where a building permit had been issued in early March. For whatever reason, it didn't get flagged for me to review it. Because remember, and this, you all new to the BAR don't know, there's another step in all of this. When things come in as a building permit, I review them. When a site plan comes in, I have to review it, make sure it's consistent with what you all have looked at. So, but unfortunately, there was an error. So a building permit had been issued, and and it was a mistake, and I expressed that. I communicated with the zoning administrator. We sent, and I should have talked to Rob when he was here, I sent him a very to-the-point letter and said, you know, must still comply with zoning. Let me know if that's a problem. Let me know if something changes. If in a project like this, somebody shifts something a little bit this way or that way, particularly in a conservation district, you know, I get to make a judgment. Is that something I need to bring back to you? If it is, I will. In a conservation district, also, if something's been reviewed by the BAR, I can take it back to the chairs and get, you know, what do you think on that? So, but I can assure you, in an ADC district, I wouldn't be saying, yeah, move the building, you know, 20 feet that way. Don't worry about it. But we are communicated with the owners, communicated with the applicant, and they understand the situation, and they understand that what they build must comply with the ordinance. So I just, you know, wanted to be kind of clear about what we do and don't do. But yes, we should, when I have projects of a large scale, or I have questions about setbacks, I do ask zoning ahead of time, but we don't provide a zoning review, and I don't know, I think that the concern that's being expressed to you all has, you all do not need to respond. So,
Can I just respond to say, I'm grateful for the way, Jeff, that you and city staff responded to the questions that were posed. I'm uncomfortable with the way that you and other city staff were handled in this process, and that BAR was even part of the communication chain. It just seems like it's not a BAR issue, and it's just a small example of a lot of stuff that you guys handle all the time and don't get any thanks for it, so thank you.
I've been telling people, it's if you knew how much of my job was spent telling people that I have nothing to do with that. It kind of snowballs from that, but I just want to be clear back to you all as far as the responsibilities go. You are not responsible for zoning. Your decision does not vest, Rob can't go and start construction tomorrow based on what you all discussed today. So there's still a process, and an applicant, it's their risk that they are taking, bringing in a design and saying, I'm getting approval for it. But if it comes back, again, in the site plan or the design or the building permit review, if I'm seeing something really different, then I don't approve that. I don't put there's several reviews for building permits. It doesn't get mine, so it doesn't get issued. So there is a check there. It's not flawless. Our system is very flawed. When someone comes in for a building permit, there is nothing that pops up on my screen. It says, XYZ, Brown Street asked for a building permit. It doesn't, we're working towards something a little more
I think the way it's
modern.
supposed to work is that the zoning clearance needs to happen before that triggers, then, once that's approved, then you can go ahead with the building permit approval, at least on a commercial scale, maybe not on residential. But.
So yes, for a small residential addition, it's just not, there's a lot going. So, but yes, the building permit was issued in error. We've acknowledged that. We've remedied it with the applicant and the owner. If necessary, if the city feels that something, egregious occurred, I guess we can hire a surveyor and indicate that something's been built in the right of way, but we're not at that point yet. But I just, thank you, Mr. Gassner. Yes, I don't know how to say it anymore, but I wanted to be clear with you all where we are. If you have any questions, certainly call me. And I think the only other question I had is, I gave a response tonight to I was asked about restoring a historic sign in town, old ghost sign. And I said, I don't know how you restore, that's not that is not a historic preservation question. You know, we don't touch those, so.
a painted sign on, like on brick?
Correct. And so I just said, you know, I would have to take it to VAR. I said, but I suggested that they not waste the $125. I said, from where I stand, I said, so it's not good historic preservation practice to do that. However, I think this one might be associated with a sign, not a, so we have, if you have a historic ghost sign and you still operate as a business within that place, you can restore it, rework it, you know, you've kind of, but if you are, you know, if there's a big Sears and Roebuck sign painted on a wall out there, and Timberlake said, hey, we want to paint this, I'd say, well, you're not Sears and Roebuck, you know, so you can't, doesn't work that way. But, so that was all, I just, but it may come up, you may be asked about it. There's, I will say there's a lot of energy downtown in the new group that's sort of trying to say, you know, where are we, what, you know, how do we market downtown better? What are some of the things, some of the artwork you've seen go up? So there's an energy, but there are going to be questions that come back to us. With that, that's all I had, and I said, I hope everybody, you know, will walk down the street and meet somewhere. Any questions for me? This feels very awkward. I don't know if you all, I'm feeling weird, but,
Yeah, all of the,
that's right.
all of the benefits of meeting back together are kind of mitigated by the masks and the microphones. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. See you guys soon.
And I can say officially, I don't know why Maryland and Virginia are in the same
No, that's
bracket.
wrong.
That is terrible.
It's
That is
wrong.
terrible. Virginia's,
Men's lacrosse.
it just shouldn't.
Yeah.
Something needs to be done.
So go Moose.